Hello, so happy to see everyone today and welcome to our Hope Story Circle, but I'm at a Peace Alliance. And welcome to Peace On, your source for inspiring conversations and information from thought leaders across the spectrum on topics related to the strategies of building peace, fostering nonviolence, and creating a world that thrives, shifting our understanding toward empathy, compassion, and connection. My name is Terry Mason. I'm on the board of the Peace Alliance, and I'm joined to facilitate today by Liz Gannon-Graydon, who is also on our board. And our special guest today is Barbara Thorngren. And Barbara is a longtime friend and associate with the Peace Alliance. And we're so delighted to have you join us today, Barbara. Can you come off mute and say hello?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Terry and Liz, for inviting me here today. I'm thrilled to be here.
So happy to see you. So Yelena is not with us today, so Liz is going to lead us in a meditation, I believe, or maybe read a poem. I'm not even sure what's going to happen next. Liz, you're up.
So what I would like to do is, those of you who have been here before know our beautiful friend Yelena, and she is on a meditative weekend this weekend. So what I want to do in this moment is invite her loving, beautiful, healing words to come through me in this moment. And as she always says, if you would like in this moment to find, just sit and find a posture or a position that your body would appreciate for the next few minutes. And as we prepare to welcome our beautiful friend Barbara here, Barbara's going to share with you a story of deep connection and healing. And so what I want to share in this moment is a poem about healing that I can share later if any of you are interested in the chat. It's called The Essence of Healing. The essence of healing is saying yes to what the moment holds. It's letting go into the unknown while realizing it's all holy. Life and death, pain and ease, triumph and tragedy. The essence of healing is staying awake to this breath. And the next. Each breath establishing a connection with that which can't be seen. The mystery of flowing in and flowing out. Small self and vast self meeting in the heart. The essence of healing is receiving love and giving love. Not missing a single opportunity to let love lead while mind grows quiet. The essence of healing is making peace with your immortal soul. Embracing relationships, accepting imperfection, seeing journey and destination as one long continuum, with every spot along the way equally important and meaningful today. And in this moment, we'd like to welcome Barbara to connect and share her beautiful story. Thank you, Barbara.
Oh, thank you very much, Liz. And again, thank you, Terry. And it's lovely to be here today with you all. So glad to be in this circle of peace builders and peace lovers and peace Oh, Kathy. Old friends and new friends, thank you so much. And I speak to you today from my homestead here, and I call this Avalon. And I'll tell you a little bit about this space in a moment, but I am on a 7-acre piece of land, which I met 30 years ago as I was driving up a driveway. And at the head of the driveway, I saw this giant tree, huge maple tree. And I just stopped the car, and it was like, you know, when you recognize somebody from the past or something, and it was one of those moments of instant love. And I fell in love. And I didn't notice the bit of a tar paper shack to the right, which was called the house, but they had a nice barn. It was a chicken barn. It was a beautiful barn. And so I reported back to my husband. I said, I found the perfect house. He said, awesome, great. How is it? I said, I'm not sure, but I know it has a wonderful house, a wonderful tree, and it has a beautiful barn. And he says, okay, okay. So he came and looked at it, and he was sure we shouldn't purchase this property because it needed far too much work on the house. Needless to say, we did. And so I feel like the tree has been very helpful in how we've been able to live and raise our family on this property over the years. And in 2016, my husband passed away after having cancer for 3 years. And it was my deepest joy and pain and working through all that is and all that was to try to figure out what steps were next. And what I really came to was loving the fact that I am on this land as a steward. And this land is the unceded land of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, Pennacook peoples, the unceded land. And it has been cared for and loved, and this area has been within this watershed, which is what we also call the Sauhegan watershed. And families have been here for over 12,000 years. And in New Hampshire, there's been a lot of work collaboratively between universities and the local tribes and Abenaki foundations and work that's being done to help revitalize the history and to state the actual history here in many different ways. And so I feel that where I am on this small piece of land, trying to honor some of the ways, and we were big gardeners. So as we continued to work on the land, with the land, asking what to do, we kept spreading out a little bit more and clearing a little bit more. And we ended up having a large greenhouse, and we're able to actually, and we're very grateful to be able to feed our family and our family's members, extended family members. But it was a full-time job, as you all know who have a small garden. It's no easy task. And we had full-time jobs outside the home. So really, after my husband's passing, trying to, again, sit with what is mine to do. And I felt like I was sitting with a tree a lot, asking. And of course, David and I were speaking with Terry and Liz earlier and talking about doers. And I'm a big doer. And I just kept wanting to work super hard on clearing the land, clearing the land, clearing the land. But what I wasn't doing well was settling and listening. I was saying like, yeah, I'm listening, but I was working the whole time, right? So I ended up developing Lyme disease, which settled me down some. And then I ended up needing to have 2 total hip operations, which settled me down even more. And in that settling space, it became really clear that this land and I were going to co-create a healing space. Because when my husband was sick, what I really wanted was a place to go where nobody needed something from me, nobody asked anything from me, that I could just sit under a tree, quietly drink a cup of tea, and be one with that energy. And of course, at that time when I needed it, I couldn't find it, but I felt that's what we could create here. So I ended up having that as a destination, and I began to put those things into play. And with some friends and family, the chicken barn, the top is now the Healing Arts Barn Studio, where I have a Reiki studio. The bottom still houses the goats and the ducks who walk around, and the chickens are in the back of the barn. And so if you're in the barn getting Reiki or you're in the barn speaking, you'll probably hear a bunch of cackling. And in fact, I had a friend here singing music outside last night under the tree. And she said, she turned around, she looked at the chicken. She says, I've never sang with an audience of chickens before. And then she goes, I have a chicken song. And so she taught everybody this chicken song. So the animals end up inspiring a lot from people, unbeknownst to us. And remind me to mention about a 6-year-old's response in a little while if I forget to mention it. And then the other part was I had a little tiny shed down at the back of the field, which I used to call my house of prayer, where I would go to just pray and try to get clear on my life and what I am here to do. And as a grandmother, that is all encompassing, as I feel like many of us do, that our children and children's children and all the world's children, we are connected, and our peace work is what helps them as well. And so how to walk with them and support them on this, especially during this time of struggle. So I tried to envision what would come next. And long story short, we now have a 22-foot Mongolian yurt at the back field. So we go through the woods, walk through the woods, a woodland path, which has been a little bit cleared so we don't all get ticks. And then down, and the goats will walk with us. And so they go up and they walk in the woods. There's some big rocks in there they love to jump on. And then we arrive at the yurt. And it's really a very lovely sacred space in there, which I can talk about if somebody's interested in hearing more about it. And then as we come up through the field, on the next top field, where it was a giant garden, I had this idea last year. It was like, where am I going to put a labyrinth? We need to have a labyrinth somewhere. And then I was standing there looking at the field. It's like, oh, it has really rich compost soil on it. And then I thought, well, you know, this is kind of like growing healthy souls. Yeah, can I work with this? Yeah, you know, we talk about when we have muck in our life, you know, it's like the compost of our lives. So a friend who's an artist and very good with math and numbers, thank goodness, came and helped me. And so we laid out a 47-foot labyrinth on the top of this field. And you're welcome to walk it any way you like. It looks like those who are older than 21 tend to walk it. Those who are younger than 21 tend to run it. So whatever you feel called to do. And I'm also a fan of burning things. If you want to release something, writing it on paper after you've discussed it, maybe meditated on it in the yurt, and then come up and then doing the labyrinth and burning it. And then if you're called to bury the ashes, because we know our Mother Earth can help transmute that. And then coming into the barn studio, if you need to create and make a cup of tea or a beverage or something, and then go out and sit under the great maple tree. It's a sugar maple tree, the big one. And in honor of the age of the great tree, we no longer tap it, but I have maple trees on the hillside that we tap. And then I really believe that when we're sitting under that tree, the type of conversation that happens under that environment is so inspiring that you really feel co-creating, and the birds that come and sit or move about, it's very important. And if we're awake and aware to who's around us, that's even more so. So I realized too, about 2 years ago, that I wanted to be able to do something that I'd done a little bit of my peace work, but I always felt aware of it, that I didn't really have permission. And that was to speak about spirit. So I went to seminary. And that was a really great decision, although it took me a long time to find the right place, yeah, which is why I hadn't gone earlier in my life. So I went to One Spirit, it's called One Spirit Seminary in New York City. And I was ordained and completed everything 2021, which we're still in COVID. And unfortunately, we had our graduation online. But this year with our graduating class, we were all able to be in New York City together for the first time. And we had our ordination and graduation in the city together, which was amazing, right? To be able to come out and see what really happened. So I am, and now an interfaith, interspiritual minister, co-creating space with the animals and nature here at Avalon Healing Arts Barn Studio and Sanctuary. And I just am so profoundly grateful to my experience in nature. And I invite people here, folks come from various different walks of life, to experience it, because it's really hard to describe. But many of you who've maybe had a relationship with a tree before, or gardens, or even mint, you know, growing mint, you have to be careful, right? Because it's one of those plants that can take over. But if you grow it in a window box and then make, you know, mint tea, and then feel that, you know, it's not just in our head, oh, this feels good, but it's actually a biological response. And that's when we understand that connection, that we are made up of the earth. And Terry, I'm going to check in with you. I've just talked a lot. I'm not sure if I should keep talking or, yeah. Okay, keep talking. I could talk for a long time. You probably got that. My background, I was a nurse and I was an educator for a long time. So once I get passionate about something, I tend to carry on the wave or something when it's time for me to rein it in. And so let me just go on that thread of, you know, being organic. And actually going back, I had mentioned the muck, you know, in our gardens, compost, what that compost is. Who was it that said, no mud, no lotus? Was that Thich Nhat Hanh maybe? You know, so we have to have this muck, and this creates, you know, vibrant, living plants and beings. We're all beings. And so when I think about our bodies, and again, being a former nurse, I like to think about the science, but I don't dwell there. I think more about the feeling of things. And so if you think about your body, and, you know, we go out to the store and we buy organic food and we get organic milk and all these things. But you know, why it works so well for us is that because we are organic. And I believe that when we're sitting underneath the trees, that our body knows and it resonates. I think that's why when we sit in circles, you know, that when we're together, and certainly we did this so many times in our peace work together, and still do, that this holding of this circle, that our body, our DNA knows and it resonates from that place. And there's a memory that we are all one. And so in that space, if we think about that, then we are the earth, our body, we are organic, right? Which is why when we have organic things with us, on us, in us, it resonates so beautifully. And not saying that there aren't times when sometimes our chemicals get a little out of whack and we need something else to straighten us out. We're grateful for medicine for that. But going back to the trees, so I really think about our bodies as the earth. And you probably know Dr. Emoto's work with water, and how that if you pray and send love to water, that you can actually change the molecular structure. He's a Japanese scientist. He's passed now, but his work is carried on. The Messages from Water, I believe, is one of his books. And if that's true, and he proved it by taking photographs of these different molecular structures, that water that has been polluted and in violent situations is disformed. That's not a word. Is that a word? I don't know. It's not perfectly in a crystalline state. But if you love on that water, and if you tend to that water regularly, you can literally change it. And he has then taken photographs of that. And then you can see these beautiful crystalline structures that are like snowflakes, you know, when we've seen photographs of that. And that if that's true, and if we are 80% water, then put your hands on your body, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else, and start healing ourselves, right? That we can, if we are 80% water, and that responds to love and kindness. And of course, we know that when we're in the presence of somebody, if we walk in a room and there's somebody that you haven't seen in a while and you love them, and you go, oh, and you can feel like all your body cells, they got, each one has like a little dance going on, kind of like effervescent tablets, you know, all the bubblies going on. I feel like that's the love resonating. And we can do that. Or if we're driving along in the car and it's like a little mundane, the music's, yeah, not so great. And then all of a sudden, one of those songs come on and you just about, you know, bopping out of the car with that joy because the memory that it brings back for you. And I think our body loves it when we can get into that space. And so we can talk about the fire. You know, you could imagine how so what I was going to do is just talk briefly about the earth, the air, the fire, and the water in our body. So I talked about the earth and I talked about the water, and fire can be seen as in a lot of different ways. But for me, it's that passion, you know, and I am passionate about peace. You know, for many years, my business name has been Peaceworks New Hampshire. And some people have told me a number of years ago, you know, Barb, you ought to get rid of that peace part of it because that's kind of old and, you know, people aren't into that so much anymore. And I'm like, seriously, I'm sorry, that's your opinion. But not so much. So it's still there. We good, Terry? Yeah.
We're good. I just want to, Gabby and Chad, I want to remind you to talk about the 6-year-old boy.
Oh, thank you. Yes. So let me talk about the fire and the air, and then I'll talk about the 6-year-old boy. Yeah.
All right.
So for the fire, for me, it's the passion. So that's the fire that's burning in our heart and what is ours to do, and that helps motivate us on with our spirit. And air, you know, the air, the breath we breathe, the breath, literally, when I used to work labor and delivery, and when the baby came out, I'd always cry. You know, that first breath, and now we're filled with spirit, we're filled with life. Isn't that like the most incredible miracle in the world? And then at the end of our life, whenever that happens to be, the breath goes out for the last time. So air for us is essential for us to be in this life, being fully embodied in this body and breathing into the body in our life. And so this little 6-year-old boy who came with his mom to visit with his sisters, we were sitting underneath the tree. And often the ducks will wander around quacking, 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 and they'll kind of read the energy of what's going on. And my 2 goats were walking around, so seeing what was going on. Again, they read the energy of what's going on, and they'll stay and mingle, which they were doing. And this little boy comes up to me and goes, "What?" He goes, "You know, what's happening here?" And he looks around and he just sort of puts his hands out to all these animals. And I say, is there something wrong? He said, I don't know. Is there something wrong? And then in a moment, I realized, I said, so do you think there's something wrong that the animals are out, that they escaped? He said, yes. Do you think I should put them back in? He goes, no. And I said, well, here they're in their safe places at night, but in the day they come out and they stay with us and visit. Because that's good. That's really, really good. And then he spent the next half hour walking around and trying to figure out how close he could get to the duck, trying to pet the duck, and then figuring out why the goats only had teeth on the bottom and why, you know, they kept rubbing on him. And it was just a very lovely encounter. But it reminded me that we're so used to having our animals encounters in cages, right? You go to the zoo or you go even to somebody's house, they'll often put their animals in a cage or have them in the cage for safety. And that needs to be true. But I thought about it afterwards and I thought, you know, in so many ways, we are also in cages, and that we have to really be conscious of where we are in our lives and how and where we want to then come out of our cages. And yes, we need to be in safe spaces at nighttime or certain times during our lives, but how can we relate and just allow ourselves to be free in nature? And I believe the time is 20 minutes, that if you sit in nature, if you walk into the woods, disturbing everything, and then sit down, if you settle your body and settle for 20 minutes, that after that 20-minute time, nature starts to come back alive again, and the birds will come closely and the squirrels will scoot around you, and the livelihood comes back again. So 20 minutes. And that's where that forest bathing comes from, being and working and living in nature in that way. Checking in, Terry, Liz?
Do you feel complete?
Yes, I do. If there's some, I mean, like I said, I can keep talking for a long time.
I think if you feel complete, I think, Liz, we may want to allow some breakout room discussion and then come back later.
Yeah. So Barbara, we were talking in the call before, everyone, how much Barbara's, even our prep call last night, really just helped us to feel so connected and healed. And when we were thinking about the inquiry we wanted to send you into the groups, there were a couple of things that came up, but it came back to that tree. It came back to the tree, right? And how the tree drew her. And one of the things I think of as an educator, and something that I've been working on myself as an educator, is in nature educates both sides of both hemispheres of our brain, right? You need to be aware, like you said, is there danger? Is there this? When do I need to be awake? When do I need to be, left-brained and calculate things? But nature always has those ineffable right-brain things. I love that you said singing with the chickens, maybe dancing with the goats. And so I think what I've been coming to in my own work is that the healing that needs to take place is educating for both sides, right? And that will heal through connecting both sides and awakening and educating for both sides. And that nature, as Barbara talked about, is such a profound way to do that. And I think sometimes of the fact that I've always lived in cities and I love cities. And on one level, I understood that the nature I feel most connected to is people. But even in the middle of a city, I sit most weeks right in Bryant Park, and there's greenery, and how drawn people are to those literal, tangible earth, air, water, fire. So as we enter the beautiful breakout rooms, what we'd like to offer as an inquiry is, where do you find those spaces where you can connect, right? Maybe in nature, and that healing spot of you, it could be a plant in your home, it could be the park, like you said. And what do you feel? Like, I like that you went to the feeling. So a lot of times we ask you to think about something, but I think what we want to offer today is, what do you feel when you connect with that space? And if you would like to share that with the people in your breakout room.
Very wonderful. Okay, so we're going to go to breakout rooms, come back in minutes and just hear from people. But our agreements in the rooms, to remind you, and for those of you who might be new, is to speak from the heart, to listen with your heart, to say just enough so that others have a chance to share, and to keep confidentiality. When we come back, please feel free to speak from your own experience and your own share, or speak to the themes of the group. But if something was said in confidence, don't share that, because it would be in the podcast and it would be broadly known. But do come back and share what came up for you as a whole. We'd love to hear from you when you come back. And if you don't feel inspired to speak, then give the gift of listening. So I'm going to put the recording on pause, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone. It's good to see your faces. Who would like to share anything bubbling up right now after you had time together to talk? You can unmute yourself and speak.
I had not thought about, I'd read a couple of the books about water, but I had not thought about it as in my body and accessible to, the prayer, whatever you want to call it there.
Wonderful. Yeah, it's a different perspective. I put the poem that Liz read in the chat just wanted to let you know a few of you wanted to see it. Who else would like to share?
Jana told us a beautiful story. I don't know if you'd like to share it, Jana, of with the work that you did in the park, or you'd like me to speak about it.
Yeah, I've said it. I just adopted a corner of Forest Park in Queens, and when I would go there, I started cleaning it up. So I would just bring garbage bags and I started just taking out the garbage. So I was hauling out large amounts, and then it got better. And then I befriended the homeless people there, and they started cleaning up their own beer bottles and beer cans. And they, at some point, the park service closed off the road that was going through Forest Park. So there was much less dumping from cars going by. And I don't know, I've met lots of animals and creatures and people in the park. There are lots of robins now. And just the other day, for the first time, I saw 2 chipmunks in addition to all the squirrels. And when I would be on the path, nobody would ever walk by. But now there are children going by with their parents and people walking their dogs going into the park. And I've met all kinds of people walking back from the park. I was invited into Ramadan to break Ramadan fast during Ramadan, and I hand out Peace Alliance postcards in the park. So like all kinds of things have happened from this adopting the park.
Excuse me, Jana, did you say, Jana, did you say Forest Park in Queens?
Yeah, Forest Park. I live not far from Park Lane South and 102nd.
I
So
grew
it's
up in
just-
Richmond Hill and taught in Richmond Hill.
Oh.
So close. Oh my goodness. Okay, I didn't know how close you were.
Oh
I
yeah,
love that. I'm gonna
found
visit
out.
the park.
That's a beautiful story. Thank you for sharing that. And that's such a perfect example of one person taking initiative to do one little step, and then the ball starts to roll, and everybody, and look, whoa, amazing. What a beautiful example. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jana. Who else would like to share? Something that bubbled up when you were in the breakout rooms together, or that's coming up for you right now. And if you'd like to speak.
Kathleen?
Kathleen, I see your mouth moving, but you're still on mute.
I just wanted to also say that your story, Jana, meant a great deal to me. In our group, Bonnie raised the notion of community, communities, along with just nature. She included communities, and I've been puzzling over being part of a community and trying to figure out how to create communities that I want to be part of. And your story, Jana, suggested that it goes back to the simple thing of living it. When you start taking out your own trash, other people might join you.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah. Can I add something there, Terry?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and this idea of nature also being an example of how we can live together, that a really thriving, healthy ecosystem is full of diversity. And all that diversity helps support each other in the way that they communicate. And we know that the places where they're monocropping, where there's only one crop, that they have problems with a lot of different things, the bees, the soil over time, and it's not sustainable. And we just know that this diversity of organic gardening and permaculture and the way that our systems can live together, is all we need to do is look out into nature. And hearing about the squirrels and the chipmunk came back, and that's because it was it became more of a welcoming environment. And so we can then, all enjoy that. So I think, again, walking our peace in the world can look so different, so important.
Yeah, thank you. We have one more share. Is anybody inspired to say something?
Well, this whole discussion has reminded me of the importance of stillness. Barbara mentioned sitting 20 minutes. The practice of allowing ourselves to be still, allowing ourselves to be in the midst of our environment, to be connected to it, is our agency. Now, a lot of people like myself think that I am the agent of change to do this, that, and the other thing, and I'm doing. But like before the session got started, I've been reminded recently, rather forcibly, that being still is healing, just like that poem that Liz shared. Being still. It's like not what we're taught. Not what we're taught. This culture is do it.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think what Barbara said yesterday when we were preparing for the call, something that stuck with me. We go to yoga class or we go to meditation and we have this, very centering, wonderful time. And then we leave and we get in the car and drive down the street and we totally break it, and we don't stay in that space very long. We don't allow it to happen. So it's what you were saying, David, to be still and to allow that stillness to really seep into our souls. So I think we're going to close the call. I'm putting some links in the chat. This Hope Story Circle is brought to you by the Peace Alliance, and the website is peacealliance.org. And we have our Peace On podcasts that you can find on the website. And also something about the Hope Story Circles. If you're interested, you can share it with your personal network and invite them to join you next time. We also have an initiative called the Blueprint for Peace. If you click on that link, then messages will be sent to all of your elected officials to let them know that you support policy about violence reduction and peace building. And also about our key legislation, the Department of Peace Building Act, HR 1111, which is always in our vision. We are a small nonprofit. We appreciate donations of any size. We especially this year are having a drive to gather 22 new monthly donors. So, and I think we have 4 new ones. So we have work to do there. So if you're interested in becoming a monthly donor and giving us sustainable income, that would be greatly appreciated. Also our calendar of events and for the next Hope Story Circles and also our national calls and the Department of Peace Building calls, all of these ways to connect with people around these issues and these things that we want to gather together to join together. So with that, I'll hand it, unless Barbara, you have anything closing you want to say before Liz brings us to a close?
I want to thank you all very much. And I also want to remind us, even if we can't get out physically into the woods or the forest, we have amazing imaginations and we can do this through meditation and visualization. So all is available to us. And then having a little blade of grass growing in your glass on the windowsill is helpful. So thank you so much. And may the forest be with you.
Barbara. Liz?
Oh, yeah.
That was great.
Yeah, I'm going to share a story I hadn't thought about in a few months. And it was because John talked about cleaning the corner of the park. There's a park in New York. You've probably seen pictures. It's called Washington Square Park. And it's in Greenwich Village. And it's one of my favorite places to be. My dear uncle lived in Greenwich Village. My mother was a nurse in Greenwich Village. And lately I've been drawn to healing. And I knew that the healing took place in Greenwich Village, and I would go down to this particular place and write and heal. And I would love to sit in that park. It's so full of life. And I always go through the archway, right? There's an Arc de Triomphe, right in the same vein as the one in Paris. But back in December, it was one of the last beautiful warm days in New York, and I spent it in the village. And I was meeting someone and I ran out of time, and I always walk a very specific way out of the park, and it's through the archway. And I didn't have time to do that. So I cut across the park to the northwest corner, and I don't ever remember cutting across that part of the park. And when I got there, there was really this congregation of, I want to call lost souls. There were clearly people, like there were drugs out in the open. It felt so dark. And it was the first time I ever felt scared in the park. And I rushed through it. And I just really felt this darkness. And when I got home that night, I Googled the park. I wanted to know what that was. And I found this out, and I'm just looking again, that in that corner of the park is a tree that's 300 something years old, and they call it the hangman's elm. And I don't know if anyone who walks through that park knows that, but I felt it. And after your story, Jonna, what I know is that maybe now that I've done my own healing, maybe I need to spend some time in that corner of the park, just radiating out with the tree and connecting whatever healing it is. That's what I'm going to go out and do. And even in the, even in the city, maybe as we go off in the next 2 weeks, just find one little corner of one little space that you can connect and healing well. And it's a mutuality, right? That the tree or the green can offer you healing, but you can offer healing back. And so, yeah, maybe if we can just connect to find one place, but I'm going to commit in the next 2 weeks to spend some time down in that corner of the park, and see what comes up. Thank you so much, Jonna. And if anyone has any kind of final words or final messages, I'm so grateful for this call and for all the presence of each of you.
Yeah,
Barbara's holding the book.
Thank you, Liz. And I put the name of this book in the chat. It is Forest Bathing Retreat. It's just beautifully done. And the intro is offered by, I put her name in there, Robin Wall Kimmerer, who is the author of Braiding Sweetgrass. And it's full of gorgeous pictures, prayers, poems, and scientific information about how, thank you, Liz. Yes, it's a collaborative effort. We heal when we're working with the trees, and the trees heal when we're mutual love, about love. Yeah, thank you so much.
I want to mention something too, if you'll allow me, Liz.
Of course.
You brought to my mind there's a nonprofit in Japan that for the past few decades have worked on gathering seeds from trees in Hiroshima and Nagasaki that survived. And then they're now taking those seeds and trying to plant them around the world with the idea of, the thinking of peace and, all this kind of stuff. That's what I thought when you mentioned to me about that plant, is it would be interesting to have one of those plants that survived Hiroshima next to it.
Beautiful.
That's lovely, Bonnie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Yes, thank you. Feel free to come off mute and say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you,
Barbara.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. That was beautiful.
It was.
Thanks, everyone.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us today at Peace On. We hope that it inspires you to engage in dialogue in your larger community. Peace On is brought to you by the Peace Alliance, found at peacealliance.org.